The National Theatre in Prague is known as the alma mater of Czech opera, and as the national monument of Czech history and art. The National Theatre belongs to the most important Czech cultural institutions with a rich artistic tradition, which helped to preserve and develop the most important features of the nation, the Czech language, and a sense for a Czech musical and dramatic way of thinking. Today the National Theatre consists of 3 artistic ensembles: opera, ballet and drama. They alternate in the performances in the historic building of the National Theatre, in the Theatre of the Estates and in the Kolowrat Theatre. All 3 artistic ensembles select the repertoire both from classical heritage and modern authors. Initial design and construction 1844 to 1881. The cornerstone of the National Theatre was laid on 16 May 1868, but the idea of building a theatre dates back to the autumn of 1844 at the gatherings of patriots in Prague. An application was submitted by František Palacký to the Provincial Committee of the Czech Assembly on 29 January 1845, requesting the privilege of constructing, furnishing, maintaining and managing of an independent Czech theatre. The application was granted in April 1845, but it was not until 6 years later, in April 1851, that the founding society for the establishment of a Czech National Theatre in Prague made the first public appeal to start a collection. A year later the proceeds went toward the purchase of land belonging to a former salt works covering an area of not quite 28 acres, which determined the magnificent site of the theatre on the banks of the river Vltava facing the panorama of Prague Castle. But at the same time the cramped area and trapezium shape posed challenging problems for the designers of the building. The era of von Bach absolutism brought to a halt preparations for the envisaged theatre and supported the concept of a modest provisional building, which was erected on the south side of the theatre parcel by architect Ignác Ullmann and opened on 18 November 1862. The building of the Provisional Theatre then became a constituent part of the final version of the National Theatre. Its outside cladding is visible to this day in the elevated section of the rear part of the building, and the interior layout was only obliterated following the latest reconstruction of the National Theatre in 1977 to 1983. Simultaneously with the realization of this minimal program asserted by F.L. Riga and the Provincial Committee, the young progressive advocates of the original ambitious concept of the building launched an offensive. In 1865 these men attained leading positions in the society and requested the 33-year-old professor of civil engineering at the Prague Technical College, architect Josef Zetek, to draft a design for the National Theatre. He then came out on top in a later declared open competition, and in 1867 construction work began. On 16 May 1868, the foundation stone was laid, and in November the foundations were completed. In 1875 the new building reached its full height, and in 1877 the theatre was roofed over. As of 1873 there was an ongoing competition for the interior decoration of the building, the scenario of which had been elaborated by a special commission under the leadership of Sladkovsky. On the one hand, the themes were in the spirit of the neo-Renaissance concept of a classic building. On the other hand, they were inspired by the current enthusiasm for Slavonic mythology and the stories of the manuscripts. Both of these concepts were based on Joseph Mann's paintings and connected with the contemporary style of Romantic landscape painting. They provided the fundamental ideology guiding artistic expression, which today is described as the art of the generation of the National Theatre. The theatre includes a trigger and 10 exterior exterior allegorical sculptures by Bohuslav Sknuch, 10 more exterior pieces by Antonin Wagner, the stone pieces by Max Verrick, and an interior sculptured pediment group over the proscenium arch by Sknuch. Grand opening. The National Theatre was opened for the first time on the 11th of June 1881, to honor the visit of Crown Prince Rudolf of Austria. Bedřich Smetana's opera Libusz was given its world premiere, conducted by Adolf Czech. Another 11 performances were presented after that. Then the theatre was closed down to enable the completion of the finishing touches. While this work was underway, a fire broke out on the 12th of August 1881, which destroyed the coppered dome, the auditorium and the stage of the theatre. The fire was seen as a national catastrophe and was met with a mighty wave of determination to take up a new collection. Within 47 days 1 million guldens were collected. This national enthusiasm, however, did not correspond to the behind-the-scenes battles that flared up following the catastrophe. Architect Joseph Zetek was no longer in the running, and his pupil architect Joseph Schultz was summoned to work on the reconstruction. He was the one to assert the expansion of the edifice to include the block of flats belonging to Dr. Polak that was situated behind the building of the Provisional Theatre. He made this building a part of the National Theatre and simultaneously changed somewhat the area of the auditorium to improve visibility. He did, however, take into account with utmost sensitivity the style of Zetek's design, and so he managed to merge 3 buildings by various architects to form an absolute unity of style. Reconstruction and reopening, 1883 to 1977. The interior artwork was done by Miklos Ailes and František Zenizek. The building of the National Theatre was inaugurated on the 18th of November 1883. The building, with perfect technical equipment, served without any extensive modifications for almost 100 years. It was only on the 1st of April 1977, following a performance of The Lantern by Jirasek, that the theatre was closed down for 6 years. Additional reconstruction, 1977 to 1983 and after. Architect Zdeněk Vavra was appointed to take charge of the overall reconstruction work. This extensive project was combined with the completion of work on the entire setting of the theatre. The work was completed to meet an important deadline, which was the date of the 100th anniversary of the opening of the National Theatre, the 18th of November 1983. On that day the theatre was handed over to the public again with the performance of Smetana's Libusz. Nowadays this historic, extremely prestigious and beautiful building, together with the annex of a modern office building that also includes the main box office, represents the main stage of the 3 artistic ensembles of the National Theatre, the drama, opera and ballet. In 1989 the general director of the National Theatre, composer Jiří Power, was dismissed from his post because of his support for the policies of the former communist Czechoslovak government. Power locked all staff out of the National and Smetana theatres on the 17th of November 1989 to prevent members of the opera, ballet and drama companies from staging protest performances. After a 3-week strike, Power was replaced by Ivo Zedek. Komerční banka Award. On the 4th of May 2005, Komerční banka signed an agreement with the National Theatre in Prague to annually honor the most prominent acts performed at the Czech National Theatre in overall 3 categories: ballet, drama and opera. The recipients of the KOBANADI Award receive a statuette designed by the academic Jaroslav Rona, 100,000 Czech koruna. The first ceremony was held on the 26th of October 2006 at the stage of the National Theatre.